Well, it keeps happening. PSA comics sell again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So last week I did my market report on the PSA slabs that I personally had for sale. Remember, I had a Marvel Superhero Secret Wars number 8 with exceptionally white pages that I wanted to find out if it could sell at the same prices of CGC. We did a little bit of a poll. We got some opinions on what I should list it for, and it ended up going for right around the 30 to 90 day moving average of that book, maybe even a little bit on the upper echelon compared to its CGC counterparts. Well, we have more sales to talk about that occurred this past week. And so in this video, we're going to see how these prices also compare to CGC. But of course, before I get into it, you guys could like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate it. Helps support the channel doing those things. But there you guys see it right in front of you. I got eBay pulled up, and I do think that this is going to be one of the most important and interesting stories within comic book secondary market activity for at least the next 6 months to a year. Now, again, this is just very early on in the process. We're just getting, books in. We're starting to see that the market is starting to get flooded with PSA slabs. And, it still is ultimately too early to tell if this is actually going to be a thing that can hold up in terms of its price valuation compared to that of CGC. But it still is worth talking about, and it's something that we should continue to keep our eyes on. And there you guys see 2 sales right in front of you. Another one for Marvel Secret Wars number 8, and then also a Superman 680 rare PSA 96 Alex Ross crypto cover, with this one being branded as first to market. Oh, the old first to market pump. I mean, it is important to point out that these are all books that are first to market. So there could be a little bit of a bias here in terms of like the prices that they're getting. But as we see from this one, the live auction sale at $185.50 with 6 bids on it. And then the Superman 680 selling for $200. Pretty decent numbers if you guys happen to know the comps. But if you don't, let's go over to GPA and check it out. I got Secret Wars number 8 right here pulled up on GPA. We're going to go down to the 8.5, and let's take a look at some of the recent sales. Of course, 30-day moving average 176, 90-day 173, last sale 220. So we had a 220, a 220, a 160, a 252, a 165, a 140, a 150, a 194. So, again, this is a book that's always going to go up and down, but compared to the 30-day, 90-day moving averages of 176 and 173. I mean, being that this was an auction book, 185.50, that's pretty good. That's a pretty decent number. I mean, that feels like it's selling right in line to that of what's an auction for a Secret Wars 8 in a CGC slab would have got for a book like this. Now, this one is branded as being a Jeff Staple owned copy. I wasn't really sure who Jeff Staple was. I had to look him up before this video, but he did sign the outside of the case right there, which I always think it's kind of weird, guys, when people sign the outsides of the case. Do you guys like that? I feel like that's so annoying. It's like one thing if they sign the book, cool, I get it. But the outside of the case, it's like, I mean, I guess it makes sense because this guy, Jeff Staple, I don't know, he's like a, influencer within the fashion space and all that sort of thing. So it is kind of weird that you would have him sign this book. I mean, like, what's the point of him signing a book that he hasn't actually worked on? So I guess if you really want him to sign something, it sort of makes sense for him to sign the case, but that just kind of looks weird, no? Kind of looks like a little bit ugly on the case right there. But didn't matter. People still bought it regardless, paying $185 for it. And I think that that's a really good thing to see if you're somebody who is rooting for either alternatives to CGC or if you are a PSA fan. It's definitely better them coming out of the gate and selling in line to that of CGC than it would be to have them sell not in line to CGC. So, even if we don't think or we don't can't be sure that this is actually going to hold up in the long term, in the next 6 months to a year from now, at least they're right in line for the time being, which I think is, again, a testament to their brand affiliation, the quality so far of the product and the slabs that they've been putting out, and the excitement that people have for an alternative to CGC. Now, a lot of people, of course, still pointing out that the label has issues, that they don't really like the design. I totally hear those people. I totally understand. In fact, I had this book as well, and I didn't like that they abbreviated Marvel Superheroes, just putting MSH Secret Wars number 8 right there. I don't really know why, they didn't decide to actually write out the full title, considering, I mean, there's a lot of white space, still to be filled out right here. I mean, I suppose if they wrote that out, Marvel Superheroes, would that have infringed on the 8? But very interesting little tidbit on that particular book that I thought a lot of people pointed out. And I will get into that when I eventually do my case review. I'm just waiting for one of my cases to get back so that we can have it be a giveaway for that video. Let's move over to Superman 680. Of course, this is the crypto book that was done by Alex Ross. A very interesting conversation actually about this cover, because there was a tidal wave book that recently had a similar cover to this that was kind of a bit of a controversial thing. Shout out to the Industry of Comic Show, Brian McClay, Beyond Wednesdays. They had some very interesting, heated conversations about the tidal wave books that I might actually do a bit of a reaction to. But I digress on that. This, of course, is the Alex Ross version of this thing in a PSA 9.6 selling for $200. Let's pull up the GPA and see what some of the comps are here. Well, as you guys can see, 12-month moving average is 184, 90-day moving average is 197, last sale 200. So not only does this match, the last sale, but it's matching the upper end of, what this book has recently been going for. Wait a minute, what am I talking about? I'm tripping. I'm looking at the 9.8 right now. This is 9.6, right? Yeah, this is a 9.6. Oh my God. Wait a minute. We're talking about 9.6s here. We're not talking about 9.8s. We're talking about 9.6s. 9.6 moving average, 169, 132, last sale 130. So this is actually selling in line to what the 9.8s were going for. Now, 250 is the ultimate record price that this book got in January of this year in a CGC slab. But man, that makes it even crazier. I can't believe this person got $200. Some guy named Wonderworld Comics. I wonder who that is. But anyways, he got $200 for this book, considering that $200 is the last sale for a 9.8. I mean, hey, that's a pretty promising number. Once again for PSA. This is another one of my sales, the Silver Surfer number 3, the PSA 4.5. I talked about this in my unboxing video. Just had a first appearance of Mephisto right here. I listed it at $399. That was above recent comps for the GPA, but I ended up accepting an offer for that book, which I accepted $325, which happened to match the yearly high for that book. $325 is what it sold for in July. It's not the record high, of course, for this book, which that was in 2021 when it was an $800 book. But as far as, the calendar high and around, even the high of last year, kind of, again, right in line. So PSA sales, at least for the time being, selling in line to CGC. And it's cool to see that. Again, we have a lot of stuff coming to market, more listings of PSA slabs. Here's a Spectacular Spider-Man number 64, first appearance of Cloak and Dagger. We got an Uncanny X-Men number 266, a Newsstand 9.8. And you guys can see 16 viewed in the last 24 hours, 21 viewed in the last 24 hours. And then I pulled up this one here. Check this out. The ASM 1 facsimile Magic the Gathering cover. This was one that they gave out at San Diego Comic-Con that is actually a Magic the Gathering card blown up to the size of a comic book, which I think that this was a cool idea to put in a PSA slab. Kind of feels like the same sort of market of people that would want this particular book are also going to be the people that already use PSA. So that kind of just, feels like it's very synergistic in the type of book going to PSA. But again, 10 viewed in the last 24 hours. And this is something I just notice in general, is that a lot of these books that are in the PSA slabs, whether there's genuine interest or not, people are definitely adding them to their follow list. People are definitely interested in what these books sell for. And I definitely put myself amongst them because, again, it is really interesting to see what these books will actually get. Now, a lot of the books like this one right here, $549, that's $50 higher than the yearly high for this book, but there's a best offer on it. So maybe, Wonderworld will accept a best offer for this one. This Uncanny X-Men is at $2,300. I think the record high of the year is $2,000. So, again, I think people will probably accept offers on this stuff. And then this one here listed at $875. I don't think there's been a sale for this book. I don't actually think there's even a CGC slab of it available. This is one that they gave out at the Magic the Gathering experience at San Diego Comic-Con. There's probably a bunch of copies out there that are eventually going to make their way into PSA slabs, but at the time, for the time being, $875 is the asking price. We'll have to see if anyone decides to pay that. But the real test, of course, will be not these modern books, not the books that are kind of the Copper Age, very, very popular, very, very common books. But the real test will be the Pokemon sales. No, I'm just kidding. Not the Pokemon sales. The real test will be, some of these types of books, the Showcase 22. I'm over on the PSA Comics Instagram page, and it's interesting to see, the kind of books that they're showing off. Of course, this one being the first appearance of Hal Jordan Green Lantern. It's these types of books that I think are going to tell a lot of, is the vintage market ready to move over to PSA? I think a lot of the modern market, and when I say modern, I'm including the X-Men 266, I'm including the Secret Wars number eights, I'm including Copper Age in general. I think that those types of collectors are probably more open-minded to PSA in general, because PSA is sort of like a cool, newer collector generation type of company anyways. I mean, that's kind of what the card space is. So I feel like they're going to be fine having those types of books in the slabs, but is the vintage market, ready to move over in general? And more specifically, are they ready to pick up books like this in PSA slabs, which of course, as you guys can see, Amazing Fantasy 15 and a 0.5. Can't believe it was a 0.5. That's robbery right there. Shout out to Manu99 Newsstand. This was one of his books that he submitted, or at least in his story, he talked about submitting this book on behalf of a friend of his that he sent over to PSA, and they got the 0.5 right there. Of course, just a little bit of damage. I mean, that book would be a 9.8 if it wasn't for all the chew. But hey, this is actually the type of book that wants to be in a slab. I don't know about you guys, but when I have books that are like falling apart, it's actually kind of nice to put them in plastic, I know that that's sacrilegious. I know you guys are like the never slappers and stuff, but like low grades or spine splits are the biggest one. If you have a spine split book, worst thing to have in a bag and board, best thing to have in a slab, because it actually presents really nice, even though it's probably going to be like a 1.8 or 1.5 or a 1L. Anyways, he had this book in there, 0.5, still going to be maybe a 5-figure book, maybe a little bit under a 5-figure book. I have to check recent prices for AF-15s, but those will be the ones that'll determine everything as far as the secondary market is concerned. At least, that type of book. He also submitted this one right here, AF-15, the facsimile. 10.0. I don't know, guys. I don't know. A 10? What do you guys think about the 10.0s right now? Everyone's getting 10s and stuff with the PSA. I think that they're kind of, I'm not saying they're giving it out like candy, but, again, I've said it many times on this channel before, but Lizard Brain tells me that 10s are better than 9.8s. And if I'm somebody who wants to have a nice book, I'm going to want to buy a 10 and not a 9.8. That's all I'm going to say. So the real test, though, will be books like this. Again, we'll have to see if we start to actually get some of the mega grails in the PSA slabs. I'm hoping that we'll see something that's like, say, a 6-figure book go up at a Heritage auction or a Comic Link auction or a Comic Connect auction at some point. And that can be, a pace car that we determine, okay, what does that sell for in comparison to the CGC books? And that right there will be the real test as far as people putting their money where their mouth is, if they're willing to send their very high value books to PSA. But for right now, seems like the PSA books are selling pretty well in comparison to CGC. Will that hold up? We'll have to see. Anyways, that's all for this one. That was me doing a little bit of a market report, just talking about some of the recent PSA sales. Let me know what you guys think about PSA. Do you guys think that these sales are just sort of flavor of the month? They're just a little bit of hype. People just kind of want the first to market versions of these comic books and slabs, or do you guys think that PSA is the real deal? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See you all in the next one.